Hello and welcome to Photoshop. Photoshop is a different program from Illustrator. If you remember from the first couple weeks of class, we talked about Illustrator being a vector-based program. Photoshop is a pixel-based program, so it works with pixels and changes images in that sense. So if you want to open up Photoshop, you can go down to the bottom screen. If it's located here, typically on your computers, or if you press F4, you should bring up all of your applications, and usually it's tucked in there somewhere. I've got them all in this design folder right here. You can open up Photoshop, which it's already open for me, so it opened up really fast. So there you go. So with Photoshop, you can open up, there's a couple different views. Your screen may look different from mine. There's a few tabs up here, work and learn. You can learn with different tutorials, which might only be available for Creative Cloud. But usually within work, this is where I operate, and it shows recent files. You can either list them this way or have them in a grid view like this. Then I can open up the file that I want to open right here. Some old images I've been working on for clients. You can also go to Create New. So we'll do that first, then we'll open up this file, which I will upload to Canvas. So we can click Create New, and we will create this new file. You can choose the size of the document you would like to create in here, just like Illustrator. There's also different options for you. You can have print options here with letter, legal size, tabloid, or A4, different European sizes. You can use art or illustration sizes for posters, postcards, or even web sizing. All right, we're not going to do too much of that. We're going to mostly do photo sizing and opening from photos. So we'll go through this a little bit later, but if you want to open up a document that size, you can. That's just one way. For now, a lot of times you open up a document from that you have on your computer. So right now I've already opened this file, but you can just click on open and it'll go to your Finder, and then you can open up the file that you want to open right here, which is this one right here. Press space bar to zoom in. We'll open this shop or this photo from Disney World, and we'll take a look at it. So this photo opens up in Photoshop, and we have our workspace for Photoshop, which if you're noticing with your Photoshop workspace, if it looks lighter or darker or this gray kind of looks different, don't worry, it's still all the same stuff. My interface may just look a little different, and then I don't have color on here, so if that's different, it's okay. It's still the same functionality. So Photoshop is really similar to Illustrator. I have a ruler right here up top, which shows you my photo dimensions. I can turn that off by pressing Command R just to simplify things a little bit. You notice that if you click the space bar and try to drag your image around, you can't quite drag your image around the same way with Illustrator. It doesn't work quite that way for Photoshop. If you zoom in though, and then on a particular area, then you can move around. But you kind of can only, you kind of max out on dragging around once it's full. If I press Command 0 to open this image up at full screen, that's as big as it gets. You can't just roll around. A little different. There's also some different selection tools. The Move tool. In Photoshop, we use this marquee tool with different selections. We'll get into that. We'll use the polygon lasso tool, and those are both ways to select different things. Like I can select this blue sky or this figure right here or something. And there's other tools in here that we'll get to. But there is the pen tool. There's the text tool, or the arrow, the direct selection tool we can use right here. And there's color, just like in Illustrator. So there's a lot of the same things in Photoshop that are in Illustrator. And then over on this right side here, there's a lot of the same things. There's the layers panel right here. There's a few other options right here. There are comps, there's channels, there's paths, so some different things. But we'll live here in layers a lot. So we'll have this open a lot. So make sure layers is open, and if it's not, remember you can always go up to Window and select layers, or whatever layer you would, or whatever panel you would like. You can click on that. It's already open. It's checked, so it's already open. Then over here, there's a history button right here, which will show you your history in Photoshop, which is Photoshop doesn't utilize Command Z the same way other programs do. You have a more specific history. We'll talk through that. We can add text to things if we want. We'll actually do that for an assignment. We can style paragraphs and things and use 3D. We're not going to do that right now. But we will add adjustment layers and things, okay? So this is the basic interface of Photoshop. Some of the same things like Illustrator is, and like a lot of programs, any program you use has the same kind of structure of menus right here. So there's file and edit, so for kind of just big global file changes. If you want to open a new file, or create a new file, or open an existing file and work from that, or you can browse and bridge. We'll touch on that later. You can open up recent files. You can close all, just kind of big global changes right here to your file. Then when you want to start making edits, you can do those things, and you can go step forward, step backward. We haven't done anything yet, so there's nothing there. Then you get a little more specific. We can make changes to this image. We can change the image mode or do different things like that. And then make layer changes. Then we have a type menu right here. This is a menu to select areas and colors. We'll live in here a little bit. Filters, let's stay away from filters right now. Just because you can throw a filter on a photo doesn't mean you're a photographer, and it's not the best deal just to throw on one filter and then be done. We're going to talk about that, how to layer lots of filters together. Okay? And always, if you need help with anything in Photoshop, you can't remember how to do something, you can always type in something like mask, and then Illustrator will show you where to go and kind of how to help with certain things, okay? Or you can always Google things, all right? So that's the basic functionality. But we've started with a photo, and this is the interface. You can zoom just like Illustrator. If you hold down Command and the space bar, oops, I know the space bar and then Command. If you hold Command space bar, you'll get the spotlight search for your computer. That's different. So hold down the space bar. I'm holding it down with my middle finger, left finger, because I'm right-handed. Then I'll hold down Command with my ring finger, and then if you click and drag to the right, we create this little marquee box, and then I'll snap and kind of zoom in there. I don't use that very much. I tend to use the hold down Command plus, and then Command minus. But if I hold down Command plus and then I just kind of drag the image around and zoom in right here, you can see this is a pixel-based image. Once you get so far, you'll hear this little click. It's as far as you can go. Okay, but I use that and then Command 0 to get back to the whole image. So that's panning and kind of zooming around. It's a little different, but basically the same. Just like Illustrator, you can arrange panels, and you can move things around that you use a lot or you don't use at all. Like actions, we're not going to use those right now. We'll use those later because they're really helpful, but we're not going to use it right now, so I'm just going to pull it out of here and then click the X just to get rid of it for now. Layer comps, we're not going to use those right now either. We will later. We'll close that out, and just because I close those doesn't mean they're gone. They're just up here, so if I click on actions, it shows up. And whenever you pull a menu up like that, like actions, it's a good practice to kind of store it somewhere. So store it over here, or if you want to move that and then drag it over here, highlights blue, so now it's over here, back in actions. Yeah, it's right there. Just don't keep them like floating around your screen and yeah, have all sorts of things just floating around your screen like this. It's not very professional. You minimize your screen space that way. Okay, so you can arrange your workspace in that sense. Just like Illustrator as well, you can arrange your workspace and choose a workspace based on essentials, 3D, graphics and web, motion, painting, photography, or you can save a workspace. Okay, you can do that if you want to do that. You want to save your workspace, or you can arrange everything this way. All right, so we'll leave this workspace the way it is. Okay, I'm going to show you just right away a nice thing if you want to get started editing some photos. That's what Photoshop is for, is editing photos. But when you want to save, there's lots of different file formats. So to save a photo, we'll do it this way. We'll go to File and Save As. and now we can save this as a JPEG. We can select our destination, where we would like to save this to. I'm going to save this in Documents. Actually, I'm going to put it on this hard drive right here, and in U, and then in let's see, in the fall. There we go. Intro to Web, and I'll just save it right there in Intro to Web. This image, and it's titled that. You can change this to whatever you want. You can change it to Mickey. Then down here on Format, you have lots of different formats. The big couple of ones being Photoshop files and JPEG files. Right now, I don't have any other layers in my Photoshop file, just kind of like Illustrator. There's no layers. If I did, it would automatically default into saving this as a Photoshop file and save all my layers and my edits. Okay, but if you want to just save out a JPEG, you can do that and save this Mickey JPEG. And I'm just going to throw it on the desktop here right now, actually. And then click Save. And then it'll ask you how big you want to save this thing. We'll save it as, fine, we'll save it as really big, that'd be great. And click OK, there you go. Scroll down here, now that Mickey image is on the desktop. And there you go. I have my hot corner set up, so if I scroll down to this corner, my window pops up and shows the desktop. We'll get back in here to Photoshop, and if we add some new layers to this, we'll do that by just double-clicking on the background here, clicking OK. That unlocks this. Whenever you open up a file as a photo and into Photoshop, it always locks that last background layer or the photo layer. So if you double click and click OK, it unlocks it for you. Then the first thing I always do is click and drag this to the new layer, and it'll create a new layer. Then I turn off the original layer just so I have the original backup. Then I'll start making edits to this layer, but I just want to, we want to, as we're working on these photos, we want to design so that we are not making permanent edits to our photos, okay? So we want to leave our original photo quality always, always, always in place, okay? And I will show you how to do that. So this is the first step in doing that. I'll make a copy to this right there, all right? The next thing that we can do is look at changing the document size, okay? We can change the document size. We can go up here to, let's see, to image size. Let's see how big our image is here. Right now it's 26 inches by 17 inches, and the resolution is 72 dpi, or pixels per inch, so ppi. If we want to, we could change that right here, and it'll show you the image size is 7 megapixels. If we change that to 10 inches wide, and then it'll automatically, since those are linked, knock this height down to 6, and now it'll make this much smaller, about a megabyte, or just over 1,000 kilobytes, but it's a megabyte. We could do that, and then I'll change our size. I don't want to do that, but if that's just good to know to do that right there. Click Cancel. Another way to change the image size is to crop. Okay, you always want to crop to have good photos, and to do that, you can go over to this crop tool right here, click on that, and then as soon as you do that, I'm actually going to move this. Okay, yes, I'll move it so it's like blue right there. That way it snaps to that side of my screen. Now I can see this full area right here. So now that I selected crop, you can see there's like this little crop area right here. It's very similar to your iPhone or any phone you have, or to Instagram or something else. And you can crop in your photo, and it'll kind of do this for you. And I'll show you the areas of your photo that you could use. And while you're using this, I'm actually just scrolling with 2 fingers on my trackpad, so I can move this image around. And then if you go up to the corner, you can rotate this as well. So I can rotate my photo if I wanted to crop this. And Photoshop is really helping me out because it's balancing this image, and it's not cropping in, or I guess outside in this like checker box area. So it's keeping my photo size the same. So I can rotate this image and change the rotation if I want it like perfectly straight. I guess this is a round line. I don't know how to make this perfectly straight, but I could tilt it if I wanted to, like this, just to give it a different feel. So we could crop in that sense. So I'll click. I'll press Enter. If you don't press Enter, Photoshop will ask you if you want to make that change. I'm going to press Command Z just to undo that and get out of there, so I won't apply that change. But you can crop that way using the crop tool. Once you do that, then you can save the image and save it as a smaller image for yourself if you'd like. Okay. Okay, so then undo in history. Let's make a couple changes first, actually, before we jump in there. Um, so editing our images non-destructively is one thing that we want to practice. And by doing that, uh, once we have, Photoshop is really specific. We need to select our layers accordingly, and there's other ways we can select things just on the screen. If I just click and drag this, that will select for me, and I click it and drag around. But if I have this layer selected right here, and then I go up, let's go up to, you can do this a number of ways. I'll add an adjustment layer. So let's add this brightness contrast. Just click on that right there. Now if you can see, Photoshop has added this brightness and contrast layer, but it's a layer that we're adding, so we're not actually editing the photo, we're just adding a layer right there. So I can change the brightness if I want. I'll just up the brightness just a little bit. It's pretty bright anyway. And then let's go ahead and just up the contrast. If I move down the contrast, you see it just gets a little more gray. I'll just make this kind of a little more dramatic and up the contrast a little bit. Okay, then collapse that down. But now I have this brightness contrast layer, and then if I turn it off, I can see my edits. Say, oh, that's what the photo was originally. Now here it is if I just brighten it up just a little bit. It's kind of nice, okay? So I can make those changes. Every change I make, you can, Command-Z doesn't quite work like other programs, but what Photoshop does have is this history panel. Okay, now it's kind of recorded everything that I've done. So I made a new brightness layer, and if I click back on this and I duplicate the layer, I made a layer, I opened and save. Okay, if you click off of those things and click back, it'll go back and edit, or that's basically your undo button right there. Okay, so I'll bring it back here. But if you ever do something and you want to go back, just click back a few steps. But beware, it only stores maybe 50 steps in here, which may seem like a lot, but like every time you click the brush, let's just do this right now. If we did where's my clone stamp? So if I use my clone stamp, and you can see in this photo, let's bring this up. In this photo, this is the shadow of me taking the picture. So if I'm on, so I have the clone stamp, I can't use it on the brightness contrast layer, but I can use it on this layer right here. We're going to edit destructively for a second here. But the clone stamp will copy and paste. Like if I select here by pressing Option, and then I'm targeting this area, now I click on the area. Now it's going to clone from that area. See the little crosshairs? It's cloning exactly that area and just copying over this. So now I'm just cloning and cloning. Every time I click, you can watch up here, it's adding a step. So if I just click and drag and click and drag and click and drag, that's one whole step. But if I go click, 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 it's just making my clone stamp. So just be careful. Sometimes you can get carried away, and you can do all sorts of edits and then think, oh my gosh, I want to go back to the very beginning. Well, guess what? You've already kind of used your max amount of things. So just be aware of what you're doing. Okay, but we don't want to do that because that's editing destructively. I actually still have that information right here on my original layer, but I've destroyed this image now so that the pixels are actually edited. All right. So actually, a good way to edit that out of here, the proper way to do that, and I'm going to close this, is to use a couple things. We'll dive in just a little bit today, and we'll use the selection tool. So what I'm going to do is use the rectangular marquee tool right here, and I'm going to select this area, and then I'm going to copy and paste right there. And it makes this little selection. You can see it just right there, and that's my new layer. So now I'm going to keep this layer selected. I go get my stamp tool, and this should work on multiple layers. I think it should. So now I'm going to click. I'm going to zoom in here for you, actually. So I'm going to, with my stamp, I press Option to get my little crosshairs. I'm going to say, let's sample from this area. I clicked there with my mouse or my trackpad. I'm using a trackpad. And now I use, yeah, good. See, it's sampling the layer below, which is awesome. And now I'm just scrolling all around, and it's actually, see, it's copying. See where the crosshairs are? It's copying where the crosshairs are, and it's putting that information in the circle. You can actually see if I go too far over here to the right, it'll start, now it's dark because it's actually copying what was the shadow right there. Now I just reselect, I press Option again and click up here and sample that area, and now I'm going to copy that area down. I'm just going to get rid of my shadow right here and just kind of make it organic so you can't even really tell what's going on. Okay, I'm going to just do that like one more time. Right there, it doesn't matter. It's a shadow, and these are plants. It's a really easy way to make those edits. But if you really zoom in, you can kind of see like where this area is repeating here and here and here. It doesn't look the best, but since these are plants, you really don't know, and nobody would know the difference if that was before or after. We know just because we just did it. But now you've taken that figure out of there. But it's on this layer, and now it's non-destructive. So if I turn this layer off, boom, now I turn this layer off and you see this layer below. You see the original shadow. And I'll actually, so let's turn this layer on again, turn this layer off. So I've essentially added a new layer, but only with these pixels there. All right, because I don't need the other pixels on this layer. Now I'll turn the background off. So now this is editing non-destructively, and I've just added a layer and made those little edits, okay? Let's make one more adjustment layer, because this is the whole thing that Photoshop, one of the big things that Photoshop does is making adjustment layers and masks, okay? And we'll talk about selections and transformations and a few other things, okay? First, before we do that, you can group things in Photoshop just like Illustrator. So if I want to make these changes, I can select all three of these things, and I can press Command G, and it'll group those things. That was my rapper name in high school, Command G. And then it groups these things right here into one group, and then if I expand them, they're just in a group there. You can group different areas of a photo or whatever you want to use, but by grouping those things, it just keeps everything organized and together. Okay, that group name, if I click on that group name, see, there we go, double click it. I can change it to something you want, and you can change the name just so you stay organized. Okay, you can group those things, but now all these layers are still editable, so I can make changes to this, which is super nice. All right. Well, let's see if we wanted to add a mask in here. Let's add another photo. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna open up another photo here. Let's see, where was it? Let's find a photo right here. Pictures. There we go. Pictures and computers. I think working a little hard on this. Oh, yeah, because it's video and this whole screen is going a little slow. Won't do it. Maybe it won't. Okay, let's cancel that. Let's go ahead and no, there's a photo over here. Let's see here. Let's go to open. You know what? Let's do this. Let's add another. No, I don't want to do that. That's crazy. Let's add a picture. 2018 hot air balloons. I know there's a photo in here. Let's go ahead and we'll add a. Do I have a full image of a hot air balloon? We'll just add this one right here. I'm gonna add this photo, and then we'll add this into our existing image. I'm gonna pull this photo over here, and then click and drag this photo to my Disney photo. Okay, we're gonna Photoshop this scene together. Let's drag this layer 2 out of this group. So I'm going to click and drag this so it's about right up there. Now it's out of this group. Click on this image, and I'm going to scale this just a little bit. We're just going to add a little hot air balloon to the sky of this Disneyland photo, because if there's one thing that could make Disneyland more magical is it'd be hot air balloons. I'll do it right over here just to be simple. That'd be a good place to add things. Okay, place that photo. We have that photo right here. Now here comes the magical part. I'll select this photo layer right here, and I will click this Add Layer Mask. So this is just like a clipping mask, except we're going to do it a little differently. We're packing a lot of info in this first tutorial, but it's essential. It's really good. So be careful, you can select on the actual photo layer and the mask layer. Make sure the mask layer is selected. Then get your brush, which is right here, the brush tool. And we'll make sure the brush is 20 right here. You can press your brackets, either the square or the curly brackets to make your brush bigger or not bigger. And I'm going to change my opacity to 100. And now if I'm using a brush, but when you use a brush on this mask layer, it is masking it, just like a clipping mask, except this mask is composed of pixels, okay? Which is super cool. So I'm going to go in here and then change this and just kind of mask that away. I'm going to make my brush size a little smaller, pressing the left bracket now, and just make this. I'm going to, essentially what I want to do is just cut this balloon out of the sky so it looks like it's a part of this image. I'm going to get as close as I can before I zoom in. I'm going to cut this out, cut it out. I'm just going to do this really quickly. Okay. Cutting this image out, and then before we actually get any further, let's just make this balloon smaller, because I mean, gosh, that'd be a gigantic balloon if it was actually for real. So I'm gonna make this smaller and just move it like right up here. That way it's I guess somewhat believable. Let's zoom in here to this balloon. Go get my brush again right there, and I'm gonna make my brush a little smaller, and I'm just gonna double check. Yep, I'm on this mask layer. I'm just going to brush really close here. I'm probably going to get into the balloon here. Oh, geez, I am. That looks gross. Command Z will work back one step. So you can use that back really one step. I'm just going to put it back there and just kind of press a little light around there. Just go as close as I can. This is one method of selection, and I'll show you others. There's actually a much quicker way that we can do this, but this will work just for now. Get close in here, just lighten it up, it's okay, it's fine, and just get really close, just using my trackpad to mask this thing away to add a balloon here. Okay, that's pretty darn good. Maybe this little area right here, that's too far, I messed up. There you go, that's a good thing about computer programs, and unless you're drawing or painting, you can't just really undo that stuff. Okay, just get right into that edge, just nice and clean, it's pretty good. Okay, pretty good, alright, zoom back in, that's pretty good, right? Alright, that balloon looks fairly believable actually, right? Our light source, if we look at our photo, is probably coming from behind us. The light source is basically the same spot. Let's go ahead and add let's do a brightness and contrast layer to this, and brighten up, oops, it's going to do the whole photo right here. Before we go any further, we need to make a change here. Let's press Option while we're over this brightness contrast layer. If you press Option down here, it doesn't work. But if you press it and you're over this little layer, like right in between the two layers, and then click, it will add this brightness contrast only to layer 2, which is my hot air balloon layer. Now look, when I change the brightness, it's only brightening the hot air balloon layer. Pretty rad, right? So I'm only going to brighten that. That's way too bright. It's super dark. I need to find somewhere in the middle, okay? Brighten this up to make it feel a part of the same scene. That's good for right now. Awesome. Now that is super magical. There's Mickey and this little broomstick guys pouring out flowers, and even more magical because there's a hot air balloon. And so now you can trick all your friends and Photoshop cool images and stuff and tell them what you're doing. But now there's a hot air balloon in there, and it looks like the same kind of detail. You could actually like blur this a little bit if we wanted to, but it's in focus, that's okay. But we have all these things in these layers, so now this is a legit Photoshop document. Before we go any further, we should have done this a while ago. This is Photoshop heresy a little bit. We should have saved. We're going to File and save this file. And now because I have multiple layers over here, it's gonna jump this to a Photoshop file, which is what I want. So I'm gonna save this to the desktop, save it as Mickey PSD, boom, save, ready to go, and away you go. All right. So go ahead. I'm gonna upload these files and this Photoshop file just so you can see it and use what I did and play around with it and mess it up and change it around. And we'll do some of this on Wednesday and on Friday as well. And so be ready, watch this video. Oops, sorry about that. Syncing files with Google. And we will practice this on Wednesday and Friday. For those of you that may not be able to be there, please watch this video and try to Photoshop some of your own photos together, and we'll go over these masks again and selections again. I just kind of jumped right into it. I didn't, you guys aren't beginners. You have Illustrator training, so you're ready to go. But we'll cover all this, but practice it, pause this video, start it again, and then come with some questions on Wednesday and Friday. All right, we'll see you guys later.